This video was brought to you by our old friends Squarespace. In 2001, the long-awaited collaboration between Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg, AI, Artificial Intelligence, was released. It received a mixed reception, with many critics contrasting the perceived cold intelligence of Kubrick with the warm sentimentality of Spielberg. This was ironic because, as it turned out, Spielberg was the one responsible for the darkest aspects of the film. Even before AI's production, Spielberg was already working on a project that would put his darkness at the forefront, a sci-fi thriller which was to be a full-on neo-noir. Since Blade Runner's cult success in the 1980s, Philip K. Dick stories became a hot commodity in Hollywood, especially after the box office hit Total Recall. Minority Report was one of the many stories snapped up for adaptation, with the intention being to make a direct sequel to Total Recall. However, Coralco's financial problems in the mid-90s hampered the project, and there was little interest from either Paul Verhoeven or Arnold Schwarzenegger. The project languished in development hell for some time, with producers John Shusett and Gary Goldman shopping the project around. At one point, they sought out Jan de Bont for the director's chair, but he was too busy directing Twister at the time. As Twister was an Amblin production, the script eventually found its way to Steven Spielberg, who brought it to Tom Cruise. The director and actor had met many years prior during the production of Risky Business, and had wanted to make a movie together ever since. After looking over the script, Spielberg and Cruise both agreed to make Minority Report their first film together. In the original script, Agent Witwer was revealed as the villain, but subsequent rewrites added the character Lamar Burgess. Like Total Recall, Minority Report would differ wildly from its source material. Among the differences, the novella's Anderton is aging, overweight and balding, the precogs are inhuman mutants, and the conspiracy involves a military coup to replace pre-crime. When the project originally entered development in the late 90s, Matt Damon was offered the role of Agent Witwer, but he declined. It was then offered to Javier Bardem, but he became unavailable due to scheduling changes. Eventually, Colin Farrell landed the part. Ian McKellen was originally pursued for the role of Lamar Burgess, but Max von Sydow was cast in the end. Cate Blanchett was initially considered to play the precog Agatha, but the role ended up going to relatively unknown English actress Samantha Morton. Meryl Streep was originally sought after to play Iris Hinneman before Lois Smith was cast, and the role of Lara Anderton was offered to Jenna Elfman before Catherine Morris was cast. Minority Report's supporting cast featured many well-known character actors, such as Neil McDonough as Fletch, Patrick Kilpatrick as Knott, Tim Blake Nelson as Gideon, and Peter Stormare as Dr. Eddie. This video was brought to you by our old friends Squarespace. If you're looking to create a website, portfolio, blog, or online store, Squarespace gives you all the tools you need from start to finish. And I should know because I used Squarespace to build my production company's website, galaxyclasspictures.com. I didn't know the first thing about coding, but I didn't need to. I simply selected a template from Squarespace's vast array of options and then customized it to fit my needs. Now it's even easier thanks to Squarespace's AI-driven blueprint system, which makes creating a custom website faster and smoother than ever before. Once finished, launch your site at the click of a button and get discovered fast with Squarespace's built-in SEO tools. Jump over to Squarespace using the link below to start building your site and use the coupon code Rowan J. Coleman to get 10% off your first purchase. Due to the film's extremely tight schedule, principal photography was planned in extensive detail using then state-of-the-art pre-visualization technology. Spielberg had already storyboarded his films in great detail, so he got a tremendous amount of mileage out of animatics. Filming mostly took place in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. To create the noir look of the film, the director of photography Janusz Kaminski overlit many scenes and used a bleach bypass process to desaturate the colors. Spielberg wanted to create a futuristic setting which would still feel realistic. He said, "I wanted all the toys to come true someday. I want there to be a transportation system that doesn't emit toxins into the atmosphere, and the newspaper that updates itself. The internet is watching us now. If they want to, they can see what sites you visit. In the future, television will be watching us and customizing itself to what it knows about us. The thrilling thing is that will make us feel part of the medium. The scary thing is we'll lose our right to privacy. To this end, he worked with production designer Alex McDowell for his background in architecture. McDowell and Spielberg consulted many specialists and futurists to predict the kind of technology which would be available by the 2050s. This led to the inclusion of the gestural interface Anderton uses at pre-crime, which was later developed for real by Oblong Industries.
In these scenes, we've rotoscoped out a bunch of elements. You can literally reach in, grab the element, bring it to life like that, and put it down here on the table, which is sort of your composing palette.
ILM handled the majority of the film's effects. The jetpack sequence was done mostly with practical effects. Stuntmen and actors were flown about on wires, which were then erased in post. The freeway sequence was shot using stationary prop cars. ILM built the entire freeway and the other moving cars digitally. The spiders were animated by PDI DreamWorks, the visual effects company which would become DreamWorks Animation after Minority Report was completed. ILM's work is always to a high standard, and Minority Report is no exception. Though a lot of the CGI is dated by today's standards, the effects hold up well overall. The high contrast noir style look at the film helps elevate the more dated shots. The freeway sequence in particular almost resembles German futurism. So while technically it's dated, stylistically it's still very interesting. Where there's Spielberg, there's John Williams, who composed Minority Report's score. Williams took a lot of inspiration from Bernard Herrmann's music, so his work could fit the neo-noir style of the film. Despite its futuristic setting, there's no synth in the score like there was in AI. Among Williams' incredible body of work, the Minority Report score isn't one I listen to very often, but it's still great work. The use of high flutes, woodwinds, and harps adds a dreamlike surrealness to a lot of scenes, and the female vocal motif for Anne Lively, a suggestion of Spielberg's, is especially effective. The action cues are robustly energetic, but it's in the tension and suspense where the score really shines. The way the strings rise in intensity when Anderton confronts Leo Crow, backed up by brass stings, makes the whole sequence nail-biting to watch. Minority Report's score is solid overall, which as John Williams goes means it's great stuff, but just not as iconic as his most famous work. Only 12 months after the release of AI Artificial Intelligence, Minority Report was released on the 9th of June 2002. If you're enjoying this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, or if you want to support my work more directly, I'm also on Patreon. Despite existing as a standalone film, Minority Report is the perfect spiritual successor to Paul Verhoeven's Total Recall. Like that movie, there's an intelligent exploration of some complex ideas woven into the narrative, but it lies underneath a rollercoaster ride of thrilling action. One of the elements which make the film so gripping is that it's constantly in motion. The prologue intrigues us at first with this nightmarish vision of the first premonition, forcing the viewer to try and discern exactly what it is they're seeing before we are snapped into reality. The action in the viewing room, as Anderton pieces the location of the murder together, is a stunning display of Spielberg's intricate blocking. And then we get some classic Hitchcockian suspense as pre-crime races against a literal ticking clock to reach the scene in time. It's a spectacular opening which introduces us to this world in a thrilling fashion. After that, we get a well-earned rest to flesh out this world and the characters, and here it's worth highlighting Tom Cruise as John Anderton. At the time, Cruise was in the process of reinventing himself as an action star, having already appeared in 2 Mission Impossible films, but there's also an emotional rawness to his performance. Underneath the walking action figure persona is a deeply pained man. It's a cliché, especially for noirs, but the futuristic setting, which sees Anderton in a sense viewing the ghost of his missing son, revitalizes the emotion of the trope. And it's that rawness which allows him to bounce so well off Colin Farrell's slick Agent Witwer. Whereas Anderton wears his heart on his sleeve, Witwer is a more layered character who constantly surprises the audience with his extra dimensions. At first, he's the arrogant bureaucrat only out for himself. Then a philosophically minded ideological opponent to pre-crime, a relentless antagonistic force, and finally a morally righteous detective. Witwer's character alone keeps us guessing. one of many rich threads which unravel as the roller coaster of the narrative sets off after Anderton goes on the run. The first few back-to-back action sequences feel like classic Indiana Jones-esque fun. Every desperate situation constantly evolves to take on new dimensions. A car chase turns into platforming, a climb to escape the jetpack squad turns into an aerial chase and then into smashing through buildings. A foot chase becomes a fistfight on a moving platform and then inside a car as it's being built. The whole sequence is dizzying edge-of-the-seat action, staged and executed almost flawlessly. Following Anderton's escape, the roller coaster shifts to a journey through dark fairy tale-like vignettes. Muted carnivorous plants spice up what would otherwise be a rather dry exposition scene. Then it's full-on gross-out body horror which verges on farcical comedy at times. And more Hitchcockian suspense as Anderton evades the spiders. It's the constant visual and sensational variety which keeps the ride fresh and thrilling. The spiders and IDs function as smart commentary without being too on the nose. These world-building elements are there to provoke thought rather than preach a message. It's a fine line which Paul Verhoeven's sci-fi films also deftly walked. The murder sequence, however, is the perfect synthesis of the film's philosophical ideas and the excellent suspenseful filmmaking.
You said so yourself. There is no minority report. I don't have an alternate future. I am going to kill this man.
There's tension in the plot as the viewer wonders whether Anderton will go through with it, and philosophical tension as we want Anderton's free will to win out over determinism.
You can choose.
Entering the third act, Max von Sydow's turn as Burgess from ally to villain is incredibly chilling. There's the effective initial shock of Whitwer's death.
Do you know what I hear? Nothing. No footsteps up the stairs. No hovercraft out the window, and no clickety-click of little spiders. Do you know why I can't hear any of those things, Danny? Because right now, the precogs can't see a thing.
But later Sydow manages to render the character immensely intimidating by doing very little.
I'll have Gideon run the containment files. See if anyone drowned a woman by the name of what did you say her name was?
Anne Lively. But I never said she drowned.
This feeling of unease extends to the film's resolution. At first glance, it's a happy ending, with the system of state oppression destroyed, Anderton regaining a family, and the precogs left to live in peace. But echoing Total Recall, there are hints that this happy ending is a little too happy. Right before Anderton is put away, Gideon says this to him.
They say you have visions, that your life flashes before your eyes, that all your dreams come true.
Thus, it would make complete sense that what we see after Anderton is put away is merely a dream, that the story actually ends with Anderton losing and pre-crime going national. In contrast to AI's ending, which goes to the effort of having the human spirit triumph over adversity, even in machine form, Minority Report is not so forgiving. Considering Spielberg's darker leanings in that film and his next collaboration with Cruise, I'd say it's entirely possible this implication was intentional. It's just another example of how this action-packed crowd-pleaser has more layers than many may assume. Ultimately, Minority Report is as action-packed and riveting as it is fascinating and cautionary. It's pitched just right, striking the perfect balance of popcorn entertainment and intellectual exploration. Though not remotely as iconic as Indiana Jones or Jurassic Park, through sheer filmmaking craft, Minority Report is easily one of Spielberg's best blockbusters. While not a runaway success, Minority Report was a box office hit, grossing over $358 million against its $102 million budget. It was also well received by critics, who praised the action, direction, and themes. Despite its acclaim, the film has largely faded in pop culture by now. There was a television adaptation in 2015, but it garnered poor reviews and weak ratings, lasting only one season. Spielberg's output in the early 2000s was insane, directing 6 movies in 6 years, which varied wildly in genre, tone, and style. While his 80s and 90s classics are always appreciated, this is one of my favourite eras of Spielberg's career. There's a drive for experimentation and passionate creative force evident in his movies around this time, which is clearly reflected in Minority Report. If you haven't seen the movie in a while, I'd highly recommend giving it a rewatch. Grab some popcorn, sit back, and let it thrill you. I promise you'll have a good time. Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise seemed to be a winning combination. The two enjoyed working together very much on Minority Report, and they were keen to work together again. But would lightning strike twice?
Lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay tuned for the War of the Worlds retrospective. If you want to see videos early, uncut, and ad-free, hop over to my Patreon page. I'd like to thank all of my patrons and members with an ultra thanks to Eamon Kelly, Michael Hardy, Ian Hodge, County Ark, Mike Halsey, Retro PC Gamer, Benjamin Stokes, Hiroshi the Dog, Movie Magic, Charles Borsam, Olivia Computer, Bano, Extreme Streamers, Tom, Dusk, Colin Camille, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Edmark Starr, Dylan Thomas, Lilac Yene, Howard Craig Kervik, and Caging G. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, have a good one.